I was just a mechanic, yet a powerful Empress saw something in me. Evan wiped his hands on a rag, staring at the hull of the starship before him. Sparks flew every now and then from the welding tool, and the scent of hot metal filled the small workshop. He had worked on countless ships over the years, but today felt different. The metal under his fingers seemed to hum with anticipation, as if it knew something unusual was about to happen. The space station around him buzzed with activity, traders shouting over the comms, engineers rushing from one docking bay to another, and the faint hum of engines from ships coming and going. Life here had a rhythm, and Evan knew it better than anyone. He had spent most of his 29 years fixing, tweaking, and repairing machines, and he knew the value of precision. Despite the satisfaction he got from his work, Evan often stared at the stars beyond the station and imagined something more. The endless black dotted with distant suns made him feel both small and restless. He was a mechanic, yes, but a part of him longed for adventure. He wanted to see worlds he had only heard about, to experience the unknown, and maybe even find a place where he belonged. Yet for all his dreams, he never expected adventure to come to him. Not today. The workshop door clanged open, and Evan glanced up to see two uniformed figures standing there, their expressions sharp and urgent. They looked like military officers, but the markings on their sleeves were unfamiliar. "Are you Evan?" one of them asked, his voice crisp. "We need your help, it's urgent." Evan wiped his hands again and nodded slowly. "I'm a mechanic, what's the problem?" The officer glanced at his companion and then spoke in a low, hurried tone. "It's the Empress's ship. There's a malfunction and the crew says no one else can fix it. We were told you're the best mechanic on this station." Evan's heart skipped a beat. The Empress. He had heard stories, of course. Lyra, ruler of a vast galactic empire known for her intelligence, strategic mind, and fierce presence. Few had ever seen her, and fewer still had worked directly on her starships. The idea of being called to repair her vessel seemed impossible, but here they were, standing in front of him, counting on his skill. I can take a look," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "Lead me to it." The officers led him through the station, past bustling markets and docking bays, to a sleek, gleaming starship unlike anything Evan had ever seen. Its hull was polished to perfection, reflecting the lights of the station like liquid metal. The ship seemed alive, almost breathing, and Evan felt a shiver of awe. He had repaired many ships, but this was something else. As he approached, a figure appeared on the deck, tall, regal, and radiating authority. Empress Lyra herself. Her uniform shimmered under the lights, and her eyes, sharp and calculating, met his. She studied him for a moment, and Evan felt the weight of her gaze. Most people would have been intimidated, but something in him kept him steady. He had faced machines far more temperamental than this human, after all. "Are you the mechanic?" she asked, her voice calm but commanding. "I am," Evan replied, keeping his tone respectful. "I've been told there's a malfunction." Lyra nodded once. "Yes. My ship's engine has been acting strangely. The crew is worried. I want you to find the problem and fix it." Evan stepped aboard the ship, feeling the hum of its systems beneath his feet. The corridors were wide and spotless, with glowing panels lining the walls. It was unlike any station or vessel he had worked on before. He moved carefully, inspecting wires, conduits, and machinery, his hands moving with confidence born of years of experience. As he worked, he noticed something unusual, small inconsistencies in the engine's core, signs that it had been tampered with. Someone had deliberately tried to sabotage the ship. Evan's brow furrowed. If the crew had not noticed it in time, the consequences could have been catastrophic. He checked every system meticulously, isolating the problem, and soon identified the source. A small, almost invisible device placed deep within the engine matrix. He frowned. Whoever had done this knew what they were doing. It was clever, precise, and dangerous. And it was not the work of a careless technician. It was deliberate. Evan removed the device carefully and examined it. "This was meant to disable the ship completely," he said quietly. A soft voice answered him from behind. "I see you've found it." He turned to see Lyra standing there, her eyes studying him. "Few notice such subtle changes," she continued. "Most would have replaced parts blindly, but you understood what was wrong immediately." That kind of insight is rare. Evan felt a mix of pride and nervousness. He was just a mechanic. That's all he had ever been, but the Empress, she seemed to see something more. "I just do my job," he said modestly. "I look at the details and I figure things out." Lyra smiled faintly, a hint of amusement in her eyes. Your job is more than that. You see what others overlook. That is a talent worth noticing. Evan worked for hours, repairing the damage and restoring the ship's systems to perfect function. As he did, he noticed Lyra observing him silently, occasionally asking questions about his methods. She was curious, intelligent, and attentive. There was a sense of strategy in her questions, a subtle test of his abilities. Evan answered carefully, explaining his decisions and reasoning. By the time the repairs were complete, the ship hummed smoothly, the engines stable and powerful. The sabotage had been neutralized and the vessel was safe once more. Evan stepped back, wiping his hands again, and looked at Lyra. You've done well, she said. Better than well. You've saved this ship and possibly saved many lives. Not everyone could do what you did. Evan nodded, unsure how to respond. Praise from a ruler was not something he was accustomed to. Thank you, ma'am. I just fixed what needed fixing. Lyra's gaze softened slightly. You fixed more than machinery. You revealed your character. Calm under pressure, precise, intelligent. These qualities matter more than strength or wealth in my world. I see potential in you, Evan. Something rare, something important. Evan felt a strange mixture of awe and disbelief. He had never considered himself important. He was a mechanic, but the Empress saw something different. Her words lingered in his mind as he walked back through the corridors of the ship. For the first time, he wondered if perhaps there was more to his life than fixing machines on a small station. As the crew prepared the ship to leave, Lyra approached him one last time. You may think this was a simple repair, she said, but it was more. Remember this feeling, Evan. You are capable of more than you realize. Keep observing, keep learning, and trust yourself. The galaxy is vast, and sometimes ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Evan nodded, his mind racing. The hum of the ship's engines filled the air, and he imagined what it would be like to see the stars from beyond the station. He had always wanted adventure, and now, for the first time, he felt it was possible. As the Empress's ship lifted off the station, Evan returned to his workshop, but he could not shake the feeling that something had changed. He glanced at the tools and machines around him, familiar and comforting, yet they no longer seemed enough. The stars outside the window called to him, distant and mysterious, as if inviting him to step beyond the ordinary. Evan knew one thing for certain. His life as a simple mechanic was about to change, and though he could not yet see the path ahead, he felt a spark of excitement and anticipation. Something in him had awakened, a sense that he was meant for more, and that the Empress's gaze had recognized something he had never recognized in himself. He returned to his workbench, picked up his tools, and began tinkering with a small shuttle he had been fixing. Yet his mind was elsewhere, thinking about possibilities, about the galaxy, and about the mysterious figure who had seen something extraordinary in him. For the first time in his life, Evan felt that he was on the edge of something greater than he had ever imagined. And as the stars shimmered beyond the station's windows, he allowed himself to dream, to imagine a life that was no longer ordinary, a life that might one day reach the stars themselves. The station's hum carried on around him, the familiar sounds of a world he knew so well. Yet Evan's heart beat faster with the excitement of what was to come. He did not know what the future held, but one thing was clear. He was no longer just a mechanic. And somewhere deep inside, he understood that his life, and perhaps the fate of more than just himself, was about to change forever. The ship moved steadily through the dark expanse of space, leaving behind the familiar station and heading toward the imperial capital, a massive planet encased in clouds of blue and silver. Evan watched from the observation deck, awed by the swirling storms and glowing cities that dotted the surface. He had seen stars before, but this view, with its living, breathing civilization below, felt different. It made him feel small, but not insignificant. Lyra stood beside him, her gaze fixed on the planet. She seemed calm, but there was a tension in her posture that Evan had not noticed before. He had learned by now to read small details, to notice the subtle signs of thought and strategy. The Empress was preparing, and so should he. When they arrived in orbit, the grandeur of the capital took his breath away. Massive towers of metal and crystal reached into the clouds, bridges connected floating platforms, and countless ships moved in precise formation through the sky. The Imperial fleet was visible as well, vast and powerful, a clear sign that this was the heart of Lyra's empire. Evan had never been anywhere like this. The station was crowded and noisy, but the capital was organized, efficient, and intimidating. He felt a mixture of awe and anxiety. He had been a mechanic all his life, and now he was in the center of power, where decisions affected millions of lives. Lyra led him through customs and security with ease, her authority evident in every nod, every gesture. People stepped aside, officers saluted, and the city seemed to recognize her presence as if it were alive. Evan followed, keeping quiet, observing, and trying to absorb everything he could. They arrived at the Imperial Palace, an enormous structure of shining metal and light. The halls were vast, filled with guards, advisors, and courtiers, all moving with precise purpose. Evan could feel the weight of history in the walls, the presence of generations of rulers who had shaped the empire. He wondered if he truly belonged here. Lyra brought him to a private chamber where they could speak without interruption. She turned to him, her eyes serious. "Evan, this is different from the station or even our journey," she said. "Here, the stakes are higher. Politics, power struggles, and threats are everywhere. You must be aware of more than just engines and circuits. Observation, insight, and caution will keep you alive." Evan nodded. "I understand," he said. "I will be careful." Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile. "I trust you. That is why you are here. Your abilities go beyond mechanics. You can notice details others miss, think clearly under pressure, and act when necessary. These are qualities that can help me and the Empire." Over the next few days, Evan observed life in the capital. He watched as Lyra met with advisors, diplomats, and generals. He saw how she listened carefully, questioned thoughtfully, and made decisions that balanced risk and reward. Her intelligence and confidence impressed him, but what stood out most was her ability to trust others who demonstrated loyalty and skill. She did not command blindly. She chose allies wisely, and Evan felt both honored and nervous to be among them. One evening, while inspecting a small shuttle used for city travel, Evan noticed something unusual. A panel he had checked earlier seemed slightly out of place, with a wire that had been tampered with. He frowned, realizing that someone had tried to sabotage the shuttle. Whoever did this was clever, patient, and possibly dangerous. He reported his findings to Lyra, who studied the panel carefully. "This is deliberate," she said quietly. "Someone in the capital wants to cause problems. We cannot allow this to happen again." "You must be careful, Evan. Not everyone here is as loyal as they appear." Evan felt a chill run down his spine. He had faced danger in space, but political intrigue was different. The threats were invisible, hidden behind polite smiles and formal speeches. Yet he also felt a strange sense of purpose. His skills, his attention to detail, and his calm judgment could protect not only the ship but the Empire itself. Over the following days, Evan assisted Lyra in uncovering other signs of a hidden plot. Small errors, miscommunications, and suspicious activities all pointed to a conspiracy. Using his knowledge of technology and his sharp observation, Evan identified patterns that others had overlooked. Each discovery brought him closer to understanding the true threat, and Lyra watched his progress with quiet approval. "You have a unique mind, Evan," she said one evening. "You can see what others miss, and that is a gift. Few would notice these things before it is too late. You may think of yourself as a mechanic, but you are far more than that." Evan shook his head. "I am just someone who notices details," he said. "Not just notices," Lyra corrected. "You act, solve problems, and protect others. That is rare. That is why you are here." One day, as they walked through a grand courtyard, a messenger approached Lyra with urgent news. A faction within the Empire had moved forces near the borders, preparing for a potential attack. Lyra's advisors debated strategies, weighing risks and rewards. Evan listened carefully, noticing subtle cues in their words and gestures. He realized that some advisors were misleading her, presenting half-truths to push their own agendas. He approached Lyra cautiously. "There are inconsistencies in the reports," he said. "Some information doesn't match reality. You may be receiving advice influenced by personal motives." Lyra's eyes narrowed, considering his words. "Show me what you mean," she said. Evan outlined the discrepancies, using clear logic and evidence he had gathered. Lyra studied the details carefully, and slowly she nodded. "You are correct," she said. "This could have been dangerous if we had acted without scrutiny. You have prevented a serious mistake." Evan felt a mix of pride and relief. He had not only identified sabotage, but had also helped protect the Empire from poor decisions. The realization that his skills mattered on such a scale filled him with confidence. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a contributor, a protector, and someone whose judgment mattered. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder. You are learning quickly, Evan. Observation, patience, and reasoning, these are as powerful as any weapon. Remember that. The people around you may not always be honest or loyal. Trust what you see, think carefully, and act wisely. The days grew more intense as Evan became more involved in the Empire's affairs. He accompanied Lyra on strategic meetings, helped analyze reports, and even advised on technical matters that intersected with political decisions. Each challenge tested his abilities and expanded his understanding of the world beyond the workshop. One night, as he worked late in a quiet room, he reflected on how far he had come. He had gone from a simple mechanic repairing engines on a station to someone who could influence decisions affecting millions of lives. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it also felt right. He realized that the skills he had taken for granted, attention to detail, problem-solving, and calmness under pressure, were exactly what was needed in this world. The turning point came when Evan uncovered a deeper plot against the Empress. Hidden communications, secret transfers of resources, and coded messages revealed that a faction within the Empire sought to weaken Lyra's rule. If left unchecked, it could have led to civil unrest or even open rebellion. Evan reported his findings, and Lyra acted swiftly, reorganizing her security, confronting traitors, and reinforcing loyalty among her most trusted advisors. You did well, Evan, Lyra said after the crisis had passed. Your mind and judgment have saved lives and prevented chaos. Few outsiders could have seen what you did. You are proving yourself capable of far more than anyone imagined. Evan shook his head in disbelief. I just noticed patterns, he said humbly. Lyra smiled, a rare warmth in her expression. Not just patterns, you understood intentions, motives, and consequences. That is insight, Evan. That is power in its own way. Do not underestimate yourself. As the days passed, Evan began to feel a sense of belonging he had never known. The capital was vast and intimidating, but he had found a place where his skills, mind, and character mattered. He was no longer invisible, no longer just a mechanic. He was recognized, respected, and trusted by one of the most powerful rulers in the galaxy. Lyra noticed his growth and began to mentor him more directly. She taught him about strategy, diplomacy, and the subtle art of leadership. She encouraged him to think ahead, anticipate outcomes, and consider perspectives beyond his own. Evan absorbed every lesson eagerly, realizing that knowledge and awareness were as valuable as any technical skill. One evening, as they stood on a balcony overlooking the city, Lyra spoke quietly. Evan, you have proven yourself capable in ways most would not expect, but the galaxy is full of challenges that cannot be solved with tools alone. You must continue to grow, to think, and to trust yourself. That is how you will truly make a difference. Evan looked out at the sprawling city below, lights twinkling like stars of their own. He felt a sense of determination and purpose he had never known. I will, he said firmly. I want to be ready for whatever comes next. Lyra placed a hand on his shoulder, her gaze steady. And you will be. Remember, it is not just skill that makes someone extraordinary. It is courage, insight, and the willingness to act when it matters most. You have all of that, Evan. Never forget it. For the first time in his life, Evan felt that he had found his place, not just in the world, but in a story larger than himself. He was no longer just a mechanic repairing broken ships. He was a participant in shaping the future, a protector of the Empire, and someone capable of extraordinary things. As the night deepened, Evan returned to his quarters, reflecting on all that had happened. He thought of the challenges he had faced, the dangers he had navigated, and the trust Lyra had placed in him. He realized that the galaxy was vast, full of uncertainty, but also full of opportunity. And he, a simple mechanic once, was ready to face it all. The stars beyond the palace windows twinkled silently, distant and mysterious, yet inviting. Evan knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he also knew that he was no longer alone. With Lyra by his side, and with his own growing abilities, he felt prepared to face whatever the universe had in store. For the first time, he truly believed that ordinary people, mechanics, observers, thinkers, could rise to extraordinary challenges. And he was ready to prove it. Evan had grown accustomed to the rhythm of the imperial capital, but the peace was fragile. even as he continued to assist Lyra with her strategy and observe the political currents around her. New intelligence arrived that threatened to disrupt everything. Scouts reported a fleet approaching the Empire's outer territories, larger and more organized than any previous incursion. It was clear this was no random act. It was a calculated strike. Lyra gathered her advisors in the command hall, her eyes scanning the room with sharp precision. The officers discussed fleet movements, defensive formations, and potential strategies. Evan watched quietly, listening, but his mind was already thinking differently. He had observed how the enemy moved, the subtle weaknesses in their patterns, and he realized there were ways to turn their strength against them. "Evan," Lyra said, breaking his thoughts, "what do you think?" He hesitated. He was a mechanic, not a general. Yet the weight of responsibility pressed on him. "The enemy relies on predictable formations," he said carefully. "If we can disrupt their coordination, we can neutralize some of their advantage. They have the numbers, but they are not flexible." The room went quiet. Advisors glanced at each other, some skeptical. Lyra studied Evan's expression, the calm determination in his eyes. She nodded slowly. "Explain," she said. Evan pointed to the holographic map of the battlefield. He traced the enemy's movements with his finger, showing how they tended to cluster in certain patterns and how their faster ships could be tricked into isolating themselves. He suggested unconventional tactics, using small, nimble ships in clever formations, deploying decoys, and even modifying the Empire's weapons systems to exploit weaknesses in enemy shields. The generals murmured, clearly impressed despite themselves. Lyra's gaze never left him. "You are certain this will work?" she asked. Evan swallowed hard. "It's a risk," he admitted. "But if we act quickly and decisively, we can protect the capital and the fleet. The enemy will not expect these moves." Lyra nodded. "Then we will do it your way." "Prepare the teams, Evan. You will oversee the modifications." Evan went to work immediately. He coordinated with engineers, recalibrated weapons systems, and designed modifications that would give the smaller ships an edge. He worked long hours, moving from station to station, checking every calculation, every detail, and ensuring that nothing was overlooked. Sweat ran down his face, but he did not stop. This was no longer about repairing a ship. This was about saving the Empire. The day of the attack arrived. Scouts reported the enemy fleet closing in, vast ships glinting in the darkness of space. The Empire's fleet moved to intercept, following Evan's plans to the letter. Small squadrons darted between larger ships, decoys distracted key vessels, and weapons systems adjusted to target weak points. Evan monitored the entire operation from the command center, giving instructions and correcting minor errors as they arose. The first engagement was tense. Enemy ships fired relentlessly, but Evan's strategies kept the fleet coordinated. Smaller ships outmaneuvered the larger vessels, striking at vulnerable points before disappearing into the void. He could see the enemy growing frustrated, breaking formation in ways that worked to the Empire's advantage. Lyra stood beside him, calm and composed, but Evan noticed the tension in her jaw. Every movement mattered. Every calculation mattered. He realized that this was more than a test of skill, it was a test of courage. He could not fail. Hours passed, and the battle raged across the sector. Evan moved quickly between consoles, issuing orders, recalibrating systems, and keeping track of the shifting dynamics of combat. He felt exhausted, but he pushed forward, knowing that lives depended on his decisions. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was the brains behind a strategy that could determine the fate of an empire. Slowly, the tide began to turn. Enemy ships, frustrated and confused, fell into traps Evan had planned. Shield generators failed, weapons were neutralized, and the coordination of the enemy fleet collapsed. The Empire's forces advanced, striking decisively where the enemy was weakest. When the battle finally ended, the enemy fleet retreated in disarray, their losses significant. The Empire's capital and fleet had been protected, thanks in large part to Evan's quick thinking and ingenuity. He sat back in the command chair, exhausted, but a deep satisfaction filled him. He had done what he never imagined he could. He had influenced the outcome of a war, saving countless lives and securing the Empire's future. Lyra approached him, her expression a mixture of pride and approval. "You have done more than any of my generals," she said quietly. "Your mind, your insight, and your courage have saved this fleet and possibly the Empire. Few would have succeeded as you did." Evan shook his head in disbelief. I just used what I know, he said humbly. Lyra smiled faintly. What you know is more valuable than you realize. It is not just skill, it is vision, bravery, and determination. You are extraordinary, Evan, even if you do not see it yet. The crew cheered quietly in the background, aware of the pivotal role Evan had played. Officers and engineers alike approached him with respect, offering nods and words of gratitude. For the first time, Evan felt fully recognized, not just for his mechanical skills, but for his intellect, judgment, and courage under pressure. In the days that followed, the fleet recovered and regrouped, preparing for any further threats. Evan continued to work tirelessly, improving systems, coordinating repairs, and refining strategies. He felt a sense of pride, but also a sense of responsibility. The victory had shown him the value of his abilities, but it had also revealed the stakes of failure. Lives depended on precision, observation, and quick thinking. Mistakes could not be afforded. Lyra continued to mentor him closely, guiding him through strategic decisions, teaching him about fleet coordination, resource management, and the subtleties of leadership. Evan absorbed everything eagerly, realizing that knowledge and awareness were as critical as technical skill. He began to understand the complexity of power, not just in machines, but in people, decisions, and the delicate balance of an empire. One evening, after ensuring the fleet's readiness, Evan walked with Lyra on the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, distant points of light in the blackness of space. Evan felt a quiet pride, but also a deep humility. The galaxy was vast, and he had only begun to understand its challenges. "You have done remarkably well," Lyra said quietly. "But remember, victories bring new challenges. The galaxy is full of threats, both visible and hidden. You must continue to trust your instincts, think carefully, and act decisively. That is how true strength is shown." Evan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. I will be ready for whatever comes next." Lyra's gaze softened, rare warmth in her eyes. "You are growing quickly, Evan. You see the world differently now. You understand responsibility, loyalty, and courage in ways few ever do. That is why I brought you here. You are capable of more than you imagine." Evan looked at the stars, feeling the enormity of space and the enormity of the challenges ahead. He thought of the battles, the strategies, and the lives he had influenced. He realized that being a mechanic had been just the beginning. His true role was something larger, something that mattered beyond himself. As the night deepened, Evan returned to the command center, reviewing systems, checking for any signs of malfunction, and preparing for any potential threats. He felt a sense of purpose stronger than anything he had known. He was no longer just a man fixing machines. He was a guardian, a strategist, and someone who could influence the course of history. The battle had proven more than his skill, it had proven his character. He had acted under pressure, thought creatively, and led with courage, even when fear and uncertainty loomed. He understood now that ordinary people, when faced with extraordinary challenges, could achieve remarkable things. Lyra watched him quietly, aware of the transformation. Evan had grown from a humble mechanic into a key figure in the Empire's survival. His talent, courage, and insight were undeniable, and she knew that he had the potential to become even greater. The following days were quieter, but the sense of vigilance remained. The Empire had survived, but threats were always present. Evan continued his work, refining systems, assisting the fleet, and observing the political landscape. Each task, no matter how small, contributed to the stability of the Empire and to his own growth. Through it all, he realized that the galaxy was vast, full of unknown challenges, and full of opportunities to prove oneself. He no longer felt small or insignificant. He understood that his skills, combined with courage and intelligence, could shape events far beyond the workshop. As he looked out at the stars once more, Evan felt a deep sense of determination. The future was uncertain, but he was ready. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a protector, a thinker, and someone capable of extraordinary feats. The battle had changed him, and he knew that the journey ahead would be even more demanding. Yet for the first time, he felt truly alive, fully aware of the impact he could have, and ready to face whatever the universe sent his way. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if recognizing the spark within him. Evan understood that this was only the beginning. The galaxy awaited, full of challenges, dangers, and possibilities. And he, once a humble mechanic, was prepared to rise to meet them all. The Empire had survived the attack, but the calm was fragile. Evan had proven himself beyond what anyone could have imagined, yet he knew the challenges were far from over. Standing on the observation deck of the Imperial Palace, he gazed at the endless stars, feeling both excitement and the weight of responsibility. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and full of dangers he could not yet foresee. Lyra appeared beside him, her presence steady and commanding. "You have done remarkably well," she said quietly. "Your skill, courage, and judgment have saved lives and strengthened this empire. But now a new opportunity lies before you. It is up to you to decide if you will take it." Evan turned to her, curiosity and caution mixing in his expression. "What opportunity?" he asked. Lyra's eyes gleamed with quiet determination. "The Empire is stable now, but threats will continue to arise. I am offering you a choice. Return to your simple life as a mechanic, or stay by my side as an advisor, strategist, and protector of the Empire. Your talents are too valuable to ignore." Evan felt a rush of emotions. Part of him longed for the simplicity of his workshop, the familiar sounds of engines, and the steady routine he had known for years. Yet another part of him recognized the truth. He had changed. The battles, the missions, and the challenges had revealed a side of him he had never known. He had grown, not just as a mechanic, but as someone capable of shaping events, protecting lives, and making a difference on a scale he had never imagined. He began, searching for the right words. "I want to stay, I want to help, I want to be ready for whatever comes next." Lyra's expression softened, and she nodded. "Then you will. Your journey is far from over, Evan. The galaxy will test you in ways you cannot yet imagine. But I believe in your abilities, and I believe you can rise to meet every challenge." The next weeks were a whirlwind of preparation and adaptation. Evan assumed a new role within the Imperial Court, learning not only about strategy and diplomacy, but also about leadership and responsibility. He studied reports, advised on fleet movements, and contributed to decisions that would impact millions. The once humble mechanic was now a key figure in the Empire's survival and growth. One day, a messenger arrived with urgent news. A neighboring system was under attack by a coalition of pirates and rogue fleets. Lyra called for an immediate response, and Evan was tasked with coordinating the defense and planning the counterattack. He approached the problem methodically, as he always did. He studied the enemy's patterns, analyzed the resources available, and devised a plan that combined technology, tactics, and clever improvisation. He recommended using smaller, agile ships to outmaneuver the larger pirate vessels, deploying decoys and reinforcing supply lines to prevent sabotage. Lyra listened carefully, considering every detail. "You are confident this will work?" she asked. Evan nodded. "It is a calculated risk, but it is our best option. With precision and coordination, we can protect the system and neutralize the threat." The fleet mobilized, following Evan's strategies with precision. The battle that followed tested every lesson he had learned: the importance of observation, patience, and decisive action. Enemy ships attacked relentlessly, but Evan's tactics allowed the Empire's forces to strike at weak points, disable critical systems, and protect civilian populations. During the engagement, Evan remained in the command center, coordinating movements, adjusting plans, and predicting enemy reactions. Sweat dripped down his face, and his hands moved quickly over the controls. He realized that this was more than a test of skill, it was a test of character. Every decision could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Slowly, the tide turned. The enemy fleet, frustrated and disorganized, began to falter. Key vessels were disabled, supply lines disrupted, and the coalition's coordination broke down. Evan's strategies, combined with the skill of the Empire's forces, had won the day. When the battle ended, the fleet returned victorious, and the system was safe. Lyra approached Evan, her expression filled with pride and respect. "You have done it again," she said. "You have not only saved lives, but you have strengthened the Empire's position. Few could have accomplished what you have. You are no longer just a mechanic. You are a hero in your own right." Evan felt a deep sense of satisfaction, but also humility. I just did what I could," he said quietly. Lyra smiled. "What you did was extraordinary. It was not just skill or knowledge. It was courage, insight, and the willingness to act when it mattered most. That is what makes someone extraordinary, Evan, and you have proven that you are." The victory brought him recognition across the Empire. Officers, engineers, and civilians alike acknowledged his contributions. He was no longer just the quiet mechanic who repaired engines in a corner of the station. He was a trusted advisor, a strategist, and a symbol of what determination and intelligence could achieve. In the following weeks, Evan continued to grow in his new role. He traveled with Lyra, observing other systems, advising on fleet deployments, and learning the subtleties of leadership. He discovered that influence was not about power alone, but about understanding people, anticipating challenges, and making decisions that balanced ethics, strategy, and practicality. One evening, after a long day of planning and discussion, Lyra invited him to walk with her on the balcony overlooking the imperial city. Lights glimmered below like stars, and the hum of activity carried faintly on the wind. "You have changed greatly since we first met," Lyra said softly. "You are no longer the mechanic who fixed a ship on a distant station. You are a thinker, a protector, and someone capable of shaping events in ways few could imagine. Do you feel that change?" Evan nodded, looking out at the city below. "Yes, I have grown. I have learned so much, and I have faced challenges I never thought I could. I feel stronger, more confident, and more responsible. I understand now that my actions can matter, and that ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they are willing to act." Lyra's gaze softened, and she placed a hand on his shoulder. "Exactly. That is the essence of what makes someone truly powerful, not just strength, not just skill, but courage, insight, and the willingness to step forward when it matters. You embody that, Evan. Never forget it." Over the next months, Evan continued to prove himself, not only in battles and strategic planning, but also in diplomacy and problem-solving. He mediated disputes, repaired crucial systems, and even helped train other officers and engineers to think critically and act decisively. His influence grew, and with it, the respect of those around him. Despite all his new responsibilities, Evan remained humble. He never forgot his roots as a mechanic, and he continued to appreciate the importance of precision, careful observation, and hard work. Yet he also embraced the extraordinary opportunities that life had presented him. He had learned that courage, intelligence, and integrity could elevate even the most ordinary person to greatness. One day, as he reviewed fleet reports, Lyra entered the room. "Evan, there is something I must tell you," she said. "Your contributions have changed the course of this empire. You have earned not only my respect, but the respect of the people. Your life has become extraordinary, and yet it is only beginning. Are you prepared to continue this path?" Evan looked up, his mind recalling every challenge, every victory, and every moment of growth. "Yes," he said firmly, "I am ready to continue. I want to be part of shaping the future, protecting the empire, and doing what I can to make a difference." Lyra's smile was warm, rare in its openness. "Then we will continue together, Evan. You have proven that ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. The galaxy awaits, and I have no doubt that you will rise to every challenge it presents." Evan felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He had come far from the small workshop where he had once repaired ships, from the life he had thought was ordinary. He had faced danger, political intrigue, and moral challenges. He had grown in skill, judgment, and courage, and he had done it all with determination, insight, and an unwavering commitment to do what was right. As he stood beside Lyra, looking out at the stars, Evan understood the truth of what she had said. Ordinary people could become extraordinary, not by seeking power or recognition, but by acting with courage, intelligence, and integrity when it mattered most. He had become proof of that truth. The stars stretched endlessly before them, bright and infinite. The galaxy was full of mysteries, challenges, and opportunities, and Evan, once a simple mechanic, was ready to face them all. He had earned his place, not by birth or privilege, but by skill, courage, and heart. The empire was vast, its future uncertain, but with Evan at her side, Lyra felt more confident than ever. Together, they would face challenges, protect the people, and shape the galaxy for the better. And Evan, once a mechanic whose dreams had seemed small, had become a symbol of what humanity could achieve, undaunted, clever, and extraordinary. As the night deepened, the lights of the imperial city twinkled below like distant stars. Evan knew that his journey was far from over, but he also knew that he had grown into someone capable of meeting whatever the future held. He had proven that ordinary beginnings could lead to extraordinary destinies, and he was ready for every adventure the galaxy had in store. The wind of the balcony carried the hum of life and activity, reminding him of everything he had learned. Courage, intelligence, observation, and loyalty mattered more than birth, status, or expectation. He had discovered that ordinary people could rise above circumstances, shape history, and make a difference in ways no one had imagined. And so, as the stars shone bright above, Evan embraced his new life. He was no longer just a mechanic. He was a hero, a protector, and a trusted ally of one of the most powerful leaders in the galaxy. The journey ahead would be difficult, but he was ready. With Lyra beside him, and with the knowledge that courage and intellect could overcome any challenge, he stepped forward into a future of endless possibilities. The galaxy awaited, and Evan was prepared to meet it, not as an ordinary man, but as someone extraordinary.